there. Welcome back. Hope everyone's having a wonderful holiday season. So, last time I brought you my top 10 worst films of 2016. And I want to bring you my top 10 best films. But before I get there, I want to do something that sets me apart. Everybody does the worst films and the best films. But nobody really looks at those films in the middle. You know, those ones that, were just kind of there. Ones that weren't so terrible that they'd land on a worst list, but weren't quite good enough to get on the best list. So I've decided to set me apart and to make drive home reviews just a little different than all the other millions upon millions of internet reviewers spouting off because they think their opinion is important, like me. I'm going to do the best worst, but I'm going to also do my top 10 meh films of 2016. So once again, just to kind of clarify, I'm only going to include the films I've reviewed in this list. And these are films, and I want to talk about, why this film, why this bad movie maybe had something redeemable enough in it so that it didn't land on the worst list, or why this good movie had just that element missing so that it didn't end up on the best list. So before we get to the best, we've done the worst. Let's look at So these are my top 10 meh films of 2016. Number 10. Don't Think Twice. So, kind of like Manchester by the Sea was a great example of everything kind of wrong with independent filmmaking. Don't Think Twice has a lot of those same fallbacks, but the thing that kind of saved it for me was that at least it had likable characters in a situation that, you could get behind. Or at least it felt like it was actually trying to be a movie with actual communication, and they tried to keep the drawn out shots of nature and driving down to a minimum. That being said, it still has a lot of those problems that independent films tend to have. I don't think a lot of the characters weren't anywhere near as flushed out as they could have been. They seem to think that simply saying something is a form of drama. Like, oh, my dad's really sick. Oh, my dad and I are reconnecting. Oh, my dad's dead. As opposed to letting us see that journey, they just kind of informed us of it, and that's supposed to be dramatic. I just think that it could have dealt with a little bit punchier writing and, flushing out some of these other characters a bit. That being said, I think the film as a whole had good intentions, and as somebody who has lived the not the improv life, but the community theater life, and who is in fact still living it, I recognize a lot of the stuff in there. I recognize the backstage rituals. I recognize the affection for a space or a group of people that you work with. I recognize that kind of family unit that kind of comes up around it. And I understand, the kind of pitfalls and the jealousy when things go right for one member of the group and you think, when's it going to be my turn? I'm not proud of those emotions, but I've got them. So I think the film does a fairly good job, and it introduces the audience to a world and a culture that it might not otherwise be privy to. So I think it had good intentions. Falls a little short for me, but what are you gonna do? Number 9. Eye in the Sky. So this is, of course, the final film, as far as I'm aware, of Alan Rickman. So automatically you kind of want to give it a pass. And I really enjoyed this film from the point of view that it was somewhat morally ambiguous. Um, as I said in my original review, this film was less concerned, at least it felt this way to me, with assigning blame or casting aspersions on one side of an issue or another, and instead we're just kind of giving you the procedure of what was going down, the choices that were being made, the kind of impossible situation that some of these people are put in. These folks in the military who have to make these decisions. It really is a lot of times a Kobayashi Maru, a no-win situation. I don't care what Captain Kirk says, there is such a thing. So I really liked that. Of course, Alan Rickman and the entire cast are really well done, and they put out a great performance. What keeps it off that best of list is it's very British, meaning that it's got a very slow, deliberate pace. And I think it could have benefited from just a little bit. I don't know if I'm just too American or whatever, but I think it could have done with a little bit of a shot in the arm. Just give it a little bit more juice. I don't know where or how. I'm just saying that's the way it felt. It took a long time to get through, and I think it could have either been shortened up or sped up or something. And as a result, after leaving it, because at least for me, because the film is so stretched out, because it takes such a long time to get there, once it's done, I don't feel like I was walking away with the kind of long-term thought processes I would have had otherwise. That's me. Number 8. Equity. This is another one that, you go to and you really want to like, because I think it represents something really, really good. And the fact that it wasn't a better movie is, I think, kind of a letdown, but not one that's so bad I'm going to kick it onto the worst lists. Just, I really think it could have been more. The biggest problem with Equity is that, my God, is it dull and boring, and I'll be honest, and I don't know if this is just me being an idiot or what, but I could not tell you what the hell happened in this movie. I couldn't tell you. Several months later, I can't really tell you what went on. I'm trying to, as I'm saying this, I'm trying to piece the plot back together in my head, and I can't. I can get a little bit. I know that the woman is trying to close a deal, but there's a problem with the deal, and her assistant backstabs her, and there's a guy she's sleeping with who does something with the deal. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not trying to be funny here. I'm being honest. I'm trying to piece the plot back together and really can't. And that's not a good sign. I can't even pick out a performance that was really stellar or above board. It's all just kind of there. But I think why this avoids the bottom list, and maybe this again, maybe it turns out I'm being sexist when I'm trying very hard not to be sexist, is that I think this movie represents something really, really great. I think this has a woman in a starring role, and it is not a film about her finding love or the man swooping in to save her, or she's a bitch but then she learns the true meaning of Christmas or whatever have you, and she turns around and now she's a lovely person or whatever. I think that it shows her. I do remember this much. It shows the main character, I think, in a very real light. That she's a person. She can be a bitch when she needs to be, but she also has, I don't want to say a feminine side, but she has a softer side. She hurts and can be hurt, but at the office, she doesn't let that show. She's not one of these women who goes and cries every time something goes wrong. And in the end, she's not made into a better person by the life lesson. It's not a Lifetime original movie. In the end, people aren't really better off. In fact, one of the characters, as I recall, is actually worse. Or is maybe not worse, but is starting down that road that's going to turn her into, the same as the main character. So I think there were some really good intentions in this movie. And I think we need more movies like this, to be honest. I don't think this one got there, but it tried, and I think that's important. So, number 7, Pete's Dragon. So originally on this list, I talked before about the one of the early drafts of these lists, and originally Jungle Book was on it. This one and Jungle Book. But I eventually kicked Jungle Book off because while Jungle Book technically didn't do anything really necessarily wrong except some really, really bad CGI, there was really no reason for it to exist. There was nothing new or anything really different going on here. And even when they tried to do something different, they were so sucked in by trying to make sure you hit all the nostalgia points that I felt like they really had an inferior product. But Pete's Dragon, I felt another remake, another reboot, nothing new really, but it at least came at it from a different point of view. And it wasn't just kind of the same movie redone. It was they actually were trying to do something different with it, and I appreciate that. I respect that. I think I don't think they quite hit the mark. It was definitely entertaining, and it had definitely some gentle, loving moments, and you're like, oh. But I mean, again, if you ask me which one would you rather do, go see this one or show kid the original, at least with this one I would say, well, I would take them to see this one. I can't say that for Jungle Book. So I think it had a really unique take on the story, and the CGI looked really nice. The dragon was a lot of fun. I don't think it was the home run they were kind of hoping for, but I think it was serviceable. Again, you're kind of noticing a theme. All of these are just kind of, they're all right, but that's why this is the top meh list. So, number 6, 10 Cloverfield Lane. So this one's it, coming full circle. 10 Cloverfield Lane, my very first drive home review over spring break. I was getting over being sick, and just decided I was going to do this because why not? What the hell? And here we are. So, that being said, I think I wanted to like this film more than I actually did. I think I geared myself up to like it because I'd heard so many positive things, so I was like, well, I've got to like this. And there's a lot to like in it. I think as a psychological thriller, it's definitely very well done and one of the better ones we've seen in a while. I like the concept that there is something going on outside, and maybe this crazy guy who built the bunker isn't crazy, but there is something kind of off about him. I think the main thing about it is John Goodman. John Goodman is he's just that damn good of an actor. And he just holds this thing up. I love John Goodman, and I think that he really does an amazing work in this film. I really do. That being said, I feel like the ending twist is feels too weird. Maybe this is odd to say, given that it's a Cloverfield movie, but I mean, it definitely feels just too big and weird and disconnected from everything else. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, just in case. The whole aliens, and this whole ending bit where she makes a Molotov cocktail and blows up the giant space thing. I'm not going to say what it looked like. I don't know. None of it connected for me. Like, if you were going to go with that ending, what I would have done is just have her step out and she sees the alien ships in the distance, and we get that nice big shock of, he was right after all. But even so, then it still doesn't click too much, because the whole him being nuts inside, and being proven to be a dangerous person that we all kind of suspected. I don't know if there was really that much of a twist. I don't know. It just doesn't feel like the movie was as thought out as it should have been, or maybe it was too thought out. I don't know. None of that makes sense. Sorry, scrap that. I don't know. I think there was an opportunity here, and it was missed. I really believe that. I think that it could have been much, much better than it was. And that's not to say what we got was bad. It's just to say that what we got wasn't as good or as shocking or as twisty, I think, as it could have been. That's that. But again, a really great performance by John Goodman, and an interesting enough story to kind of get you through it and enjoy it, and kind of have you guessing what's going to happen next, or not so much that, but when is this guy going to go off? So in that, I think it did a really nice job. Number 5. The Edge of 17. This is another one that is very standard, in a lot of its ideas. Very, every generation needs their teen angst movie or their coming of age story. 16 Candles, Clueless. They all need them, and the characters in them usually do not alter that much. The only thing that really changes is the music selection and the fashions, and whatever slang words are popular at that moment in time. So to kind of harp on this movie for being kind of samey, as a lot of those, is kind of missing the point, because this movie, honestly, I don't believe this movie was made for me. It was made for those younger, high schoolers, or even in some cases, pre-high school kids. It's just funny because it's rated R, but they'll find a way to see it anyway. That kind of tries to define growing up and those big life-changing moments for their generation in terms they can understand. So that's part of why I feel like I was left in the dirt a little bit with this film. I was never really its target audience. That being said, and that being true, I thought this movie had its charms. I thought it had some really good relationships in there that felt natural. And having worked with young people for most of my professional career, I could recognize a lot of things that were going on. So I wasn't completely the old man in the audience. But yeah, I think this one left me behind a little bit. I thought the main character was pretty well acted. I didn't like her very much because I have very little patience for these characters who are just terrible to everyone else they meet and then wonder why nobody understands them or why everybody's always out to get them. It's like, well, you're kind of a bitch. I mean, what's that rule they treat in kindergarten? Treat people the way you want to be treated. But what I like in this film is, and what kind of saved it in the end for me, is that someone actually calls her out on it. Her brother calls her out and says, you're not the only one who's got a hard life. You're not the only one who has things that, that bother them or that, are affected by these things that have gone on. And what I like is that they tell her that, and it has an effect. She actually listens to it and doesn't just, brush it off as him being, him just not understanding. Like, no, she actually listens to it and goes, okay, yeah, he's right. I didn't realize that. And so I like that. I like that it's willing to admit. I like when a film or a play or a show, when a character has flaws, because people have flaws. And they aren't just written off as lovable character quirks. They are acknowledged as flaws. And the character then has to try to either correct this behavior or live with it. And that's what saves this movie in the end for me. I don't know if I'd ever buy it. I don't know if I'd ever watch it again. But I think it definitely has a good message, and I think it handles some of that stuff really well. So, number 4, Deepwater Horizon. This is one that I have no firm justification for why I'm putting it on a meh list, why it didn't make the cut for the best films. And in fact, when I was doing this, one of the early lists, when I was doing my best of, this one actually was on that list, but I eventually bumped it to make room for another film, and it was very easy to do. And again, it's kind of hard because there's nothing really terrible about this movie. It's one of the best modern day disaster pictures that we've gotten. But I don't know. I don't know if it's to say there's just something there, or rather something not there. I saw it, I liked it, I talked about it, I reviewed it. 2 days later, I really couldn't remember that much about it. Not much really stuck with me. The only thing that stuck with me was Kurt Russell. Because Kurt Russell is awesome. And he has the most fabulous man stash. I'm coining that. I'm gonna join that generation now. I hate myself. I'm gonna kick myself, but you know what? #manstash. Alright, because I love Kurt Russell, man. He has the greatest facial hair ever. Him and Sam Elliott. But anyway, I mean, aside from just loving him in anything he's in, there was nothing that really stuck with me about this movie. Nothing that really, made me think about it and go, man, I got to get that on DVD, or I got to watch that again, or I got to show this to my friends. It was fine. It was a day out. I didn't mind it. And like I say, it had some really good action scenes, and Mark Wahlberg it's almost like Mark Wahlberg's playing almost the exact same character he played in Perfect Storm, only not from New England this time. But I mean, yeah, so it's a good movie. It was fun, but basically it kind of fits right in with that kind of Perfect Storm mix, and that's one of those movies that you'll forget about until they rerun it on TBS, and you'll put it on in the background and kind of half watch it. But again, nothing terrible about it. I liked it well enough. Pete's Dragon. Number 3. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. So this is one of those films I think I may have been a little too hard on, in my original review. I actually went and saw it again with some friends of mine who wanted to see it, and it wasn't as bad the second time through. I didn't dislike it as much. The only downside is I didn't like it any better, really. I just didn't dislike it as much. Everything I didn't like about the film on the first viewing is still there, but I think the charm of it came through a little bit more the second time out. What saves this movie, as I've said, is Kowalski, and Queenie is the character's name. I was calling her Pinky, but it's Queenie. Those two characters are just an absolute delight. I just love them, and I wish the movie had been all about them. If I could, I always think, I don't want to complain unless I can think of a better solution. I would have liked it if it turned out Kowalski was actually the guy who wrote the textbook. That he was a muggle who, kind of stumbled into all this on accident, and through that became an expert on magical creatures. I thought that'd be a neat thing to go with. Just because every time he's on screen, he and Queenie especially, they're just, I don't know what it is. It fills the screen with such a, I don't want to use the cliche magic, but it does. And I gotta say, from my own personal way of looking at it, maybe it's not maybe it's just me, but I gotta say this. I kind of liked that the not traditional Hollywood pretty boy, the somewhat doughy fellow, ended up getting the girl. For me, that I really liked that. So yeah, I wish the movie had been all about that, but sadly, it wasn't. I'm sorry. If you're a fan of this guy, that's great, but Discount Matt Smith did nothing for me. And I really believe that it was so blatant. It must have been intentional. I can't believe a film made up of that many British people couldn't have said, hey, this guy's kind of acting a lot like Doctor Who. Especially one of the most famous incarnations of the character, to date. So I wish they would have left all that out. I wish they could have just simplified the story and not felt the need to have this overly complicated conspiracy, anti-witch movement thing going on. But the good parts of the movie are really good, and they balance out the bad parts. In my opinion, they just don't overrule them. So that's why I got to put this one on the meh list. Number 2, Ghostbusters. Okay, this is the hard one. This is the hard one because this poor movie. I feel so sorry for this movie. This movie is, to use 90s high school movie cliches, this movie is that poor friendless fat kid. That poor friendless fat kid who wears the Star Trek outfit to school because it just loves that thing so much, and everybody just makes fun of them for it. This poor movie had everyone against it from almost the word go. It was taking it from all sides, and I was one of them. I'm not gonna lie. When I heard they were remaking Ghostbusters, I was like, ugh, really? And again, not because I'm one of those people who think Ghostbusters is the greatest motion picture that ever existed. I don't. I find it okay. But I understand that there are a lot of people who really love that film, and therefore, my distaste came just from that of I hate remakes and I'm tired of them. But, I get where people kind of were having the hatred, but at the same time, I mean, my God, they were just tearing into this thing, and then it became really ugly and really political and really, like everything we do now, we can't just not like something. We have to freaking tear it apart and call everybody, oh my God, you're going to recast it with all women. Well, let's make every sexist joke there is, And and so you automatically went into this film with so much negativity attached to it, and through no fault of its own. Because the movie itself, when all is said and done, if you view it objectively, which I understand is hard to do, I can't view the Star Trek reboots objectively. When you view it objectively, it's not a bad little film. Is it good? Not really, but it's not terrible. It's not, I mean, it's on par with the second Ghostbusters. I know some people think that's awful, but I actually like the second Ghostbusters. You know, I think it might have eased the pain if they had done like they had originally planned and made it like a passing of the torch movie instead of a sequel, instead of a reboot. But that would have brought with it a whole other slew of problems. You know? There was no way you were going to do this right. Not with nerds these days. Because they would have found something horrible in it no matter what the circumstances. And, you know, again, I'm not trying to say it's a fabulous movie, because it's definitely not. I think it suffers from a lot of the problems that modern day comedies have. Honest Trailers actually said it best, in my opinion, that there's no straight man. You know, everybody, all four of the main characters are just, woo, look at us, laugh, 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 laugh. And there's no Harold Ramis, there's no Dan Aykroyd. You know, there's nobody to kind of be the funny, serious one and deliver the information that you need. You know, and again, I said it in my review, I thought Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd were actually the funniest parts of the original Ghostbusters. And Ernie Hudson. I actually am not a fan of Bill Murray. And I actually thought his comedy ruined the original Ghostbusters. So when you have four Bill Murrays in there, you know, obviously for me it's already kind of setting it apart. But I think the characters bonded well enough. I think the actors were obviously having a good time, and it's not a film that I would say no to seeing a sequel about, and maybe seeing if we could do this a little bit better next time. But again, not great, not terrible. Nothing to really poo-poo too much. So I feel sorry for this one. I wish it would have been better, so maybe it could shut some people up. But at the same time, it is what it is. So yeah, that's why it's on this list. And the number one film of 2016, Doctor Strange. Yeah, I talked a lot about this one during the review, but I think it bears repeating, because really, when you really look at it, I should really have been over the moon about this movie. I really should have just been in love with it, because there's a lot of great things in it. You know, Benedict Cumberbatch is wonderful in the role. Once again, they show how great they are at casting their roles. You know, the special effects are mind-blowing. Again, one of the things I love about the Marvel films is that they always find new and inventive ways to use the powers, so it's not just the standard. They really do some neat stuff with it. I thought the climax was really fascinating, and I liked the way, you know, I also like, you know, upon retrospect, I really like, there's a meme, and yes, I'm going to quote a meme now, believe it or not, that said, you know, all these other superheroes got their superpowers through this, and Doctor Strange got his superpowers through book reading and learning and studying. And I hadn't thought of that, but it is true. That's how he got his powers. He worked for them. It wasn't a chosen one kind of thing or whatever. It was he went, he wanted the knowledge, and he got it. You know, so I think that's really cool. But, and this is kind of a big but here, it's just very by the numbers for the Marvel studio. It's very much like all of their other films, especially the first movie in a lot of them. They all kind of have the same pattern, the same formula. And again, I said this in the review, if it was the first time for the formula, then I don't think anybody would have minded. I don't think it would have really played into it that much. But because this is now the 10th, even more so, film in this huge franchise, the patterns are starting to emerge, and the patterns are starting to become more and more recognizable. And again, I went over it all in the review, but the less than interesting villain, poor Amy Adams is just kind of there, or is it Rachel McAdams? I can't even remember now. Whichever one it is, they're just kind of there. The hero's journey story arc is very similar. So, I mean, it's not a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination, but unlike a lot of its predecessors, I wasn't going, okay, that's awesome, I need to see that again right this second. Whereas I've done that with just about all the other Marvel movies. I think all the other ones I've seen in the theaters at least twice, I think. I'm trying to think if there's an exception to that, but I can't. It's not coming to me. So there you have it. There's my top 10 meh films of 2016. Not the best, not the worst, just kind of serviceable. So hope you've enjoyed it. And next time, we're going to talk about them. I've been leading up to it. I've been, hinting. So now it's time. Let's talk about the top 10 best films of 2016. So until then, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.